Naude Rademan is the co-founder and chief executive of Linebooker, and good to be talking with you again this morning, Naude. It's been a while since we last caught up on the Uber of trucks. Lots has been happening in the trucking world, but have you guys, I know you're on a continuous improvement process at Linebooker. Have you added anything in the last few months?
It's difficult to name specifics now. I think we've continued to enhance our tender process. I think we've worked a bit on the services to the network around for transporters specifically, a bit of settlement discounts, worked a bit on insurance, and also worked a bit on trying to provide better diesel rates to the transporters. So that's probably the network things we've been doing, and then lots of small enhancements on the technology as usual.
Those diesel rates, they must be now becoming quite an issue with the way that the fuel price has risen.
Yeah, so I think that most of us will know that. And just a bit of high-level stats, which is, so specifically for us, diesel is the important part. But over the last 6 months, I think the diesel price has increased about 47%. So, that's a big number. If you work that out into the effect that would have on anybody that procures transport, that's about 22% increase in your transport cost in about 6 months. So that's significant. I think every business in the country is feeling it.
That's an interesting stat, 22%. How do you unpack that?
Yeah, so a portion of the transport cost, normally somewhere between, depending on the distance, but 45 to 55% of a transport cost is diesel related. So it's quite a big portion. So that 47%, if you adjust it for that portion, it works out about 22% of the transport cost that a customer will pay. So it's a big portion of the cost.
Now, just remembering, for those who haven't experienced Linebooker before, you're a platform where people bid for business in the transport, in the logistics game. You would have presumably a very good feel for how much prices have been increasing. Are they in line with that 22%, or are truckers absorbing some of those higher costs?
Yeah, as you see, a bit of both. So, we do on the side we do lots of procurement, so tenders and the bidding side. So it's two different places you can look at the data. So mostly you'll see it come through quickly. I think some transporters might be tied into contracts that makes it difficult for them to increase those rates. But I think majority we see that they've come through to a certain degree. It depends on how well you tender, but you will take an increase of between 10 to 20% for sure. We've seen that.
How's the expansion of the platform going as far as truckers joining up with Linebooker?
Yeah, so our growth is still continuing, same with about 5 to 10% of new transporters joining every month. So still seems like there is a good benefit for the transport companies because we can see those registrations continue. And mostly, we always ask them for whether they heard about Linebooker. And mostly the comments are at other colleagues in the industry. So it sounds like transport companies are referring each other to join, to register with Linebooker. So yeah, seems like it's still growing nicely there.
But not everybody likes you. Those who've got good contracts and now they have to perhaps compete over those contracts might not be as enamored as those who are referring you to their colleagues. How do you manage to balance that? How do you offset what has got to be some kind of a negative campaign or whispering campaign in the marketplace against you by those who you're hurting?
Yeah, it's a very difficult one. So you've got, for every, let's say it's two sides. So any new transporter probably will get access to much more business that they previously couldn't get access to. But it is a bit difficult if, let's say, one of their current customers approaches Linebooker because we enhance the competition in that scene and we run tenders. So then it's a bit uncomfortable. But then on the other side, hopefully it balances because there's access to much more work. There's secure payments. I mean, they don't have to stress about payments when you're on Linebooker. You get better diesel rates and insurance. And so I think hopefully if we look at the data, it kind of balances out the when it's, it's a bit competitive at some of their current customers.
Yeah, I would have thought that if you are a non-Linebooker client as a tracker, and one of your customers finds out about Linebooker and then goes online and asks for quotes from others, you would feel, hang on, there could be some dirty business going on here because this was your client, and now your client is now looking in the open market. So I suppose you would have quite a few enemies.
Yeah, in the beginning, until they get to know us. So we've gone through many cycles of, the first interaction with, if that scenario happens, I think that specific transport company is not a fan of Linebooker. But then, we engage and there's access to other work. And many times they still remain the supplier at that same customer. We run a tender and get a bit of the process in, but then everybody's more efficient. So that the technology, and we sort out some of the operational issues at that customer that gets that transporter's trucks to turn quickly. We kind of resolve some of the payment delays. So then there's the benefits come out, but the first interaction in that scenario is tough, definitely.
Naude, I was sent a video last night of somebody showing the lines and lines of truck. I think the video went on for 2.5 minutes, and the guy wasn't driving slowly, and there were just lines of truck on the left-hand side. What is going on now in the N3, with the mineral exports to Richards Bay, etc.? Surely there would be a point where there are just too many trucks on the road.
Yeah, that's a difficult one to know when that is. It's interesting you note that because I also received in the week a video from of a friend in Europe driving on one of their highways, and same story, just trucks all the way, miles on end. And so where it's too much, I don't know. Difficult to say, and I don't know. Might sound, I haven't thought about this, but I think the highways as well, because probably 10 or 20 years ago, the transporters can take alternative routes, not highways. But now those roads are done for. So now everybody is forced to the N1, N3, N2. So that can also make it feel like significantly more volume of trucks on the main routes that most of us travel on normally.
Interesting you say that about Europe, because we have this perception in South Africa that our problems of too many trucks on the road is due to Transnet. But clearly it's not just Transnet that is struggling at the moment. I don't know if you had a chance to watch the financial results yesterday. Portia Derby is certainly energetic and trying her best, but the bottom line numbers at Transnet are that there are fewer and fewer trains, which again must be influencing the whole trucking scene.
Yeah, I think that will definitely influence it, but you make an interesting comment that other countries or Europe where there's nothing wrong with the rail system, it's still the same thing. And I think it's a lot of sectors that will, even if the rail is working, will prefer to put it on trucks. It's one point, A to B. Especially FMCG, train in between brings 2 or 3 more links, handling, loading, offloading. So it will definitely help, but there will still be lots of sectors that will operate on trucks, I think.
So we're not going to see a contraction of the number of trucks on the road anytime soon.
I can't see why in the medium term, even long term.
Naude, help us out with the mineral exports. There are many South African products, particularly coal, are now in huge demand, and we are exporting about as much as the world will take from us. On that side, we see that Transnet is not delivering the way that it should be. and hence this has become a whole new area, presumably for truckers.
We can see that we don't have lots of experience in that industry over the years, and I've got no experience in terms of exports of commodities. But we can definitely see some of the transporters are procuring more of the tipper trucks, which services that industry. So you can start seeing that normally they only had a certain type of trucks. They're expanding their fleets into those tipper vehicles that moves those commodities. So through that, we can probably see that there's a bit more demand for those type of trucks out there, and then you can assume that's due to, the export increase and the fact that Transnet can't service all of that on rail.
So if we look ahead, there seem to be plenty of challenges for the people in this industry.
Yeah, I think from a transport, well, let's start at the customer side. I think that a diesel increase and that effect on their transport cost base is serious. I think that's being discussed in every boardroom, where a couple of years ago, transport probably won't feature at that level, not necessarily. I think it is now. So every customer is now trying to figure out how to see if they can lessen the effect of the diesel increase on their cost base. And yeah, I don't think all of that has flowed through to the consumer yet. There's a bit of a lag, so I'm not sure if the producers are still, it's not on the product in the store yet, everything, which is also an interesting thing.
So the inflation rate, which we are seeing edging higher, is likely to get a bit of a kicker on this front as well. But Naude, just looking at your business at Linebooker as the Uber of the trucking industry, it makes a lot of sense. We've gone through it before. People can go online and get the best price if you are wanting to deliver goods. If you're a transporter, you can have access to many more potential business opportunities than before. But we've seen in many industries like this, where it's a matter of time before the penny drops. We've seen that COVID has transformed or accelerated the dropping of the penny, if you like. Have you experienced that too?
Yeah, I think, going back to, it was a while ago, but COVID, we saw a significant increase in our numbers, so people joining. And then in the last 6 or so months, we've also seen it, but we think it's more related to the diesel price increase and the customer's cost base increasing, which makes it, meaning that boardroom discussion. So I think customers are out there looking for how they can do this more efficiently, and that can be what the technology does, having access to a larger supplier base, making sure your rates are right. So all of that, we can see there's a bit more demand or engaging with other solutions like a Linebooker to see if there's a efficiency to be gained out of that.
It's all about competition, I presume, that if you can get, if there is more competition, you should be able to get sharper pricing.
Yeah, on the pricing side, that's it. And I think the technology part also brings efficiency in your supply chain and the access to more suppliers. Also, all of that flows through into a reduced cost base for a customer and their transport cost. And obviously, the biggest portion is the pricing part, if that is in line. But the other efficiencies are also there, assuming your pricing is in line with market.
And finally, for this conversation, what about safety? Again, I got sent a WhatsApp video about a truck that was out of control near Pietermaritzburg. It was coming down Town Hill. The brakes, clearly the guy was trying to put his brakes on, but they were smoking. They weren't working. And there was an accident. And you actually saw, it's quite spectacular when you can follow this for, say, 20 seconds or so and then see the accident happening. How do you help in maybe offsetting the risk that has to be there?
I'm thinking that might have been in the beginning for, let's say, the people don't like Linebooker, a misconception there. So we are, as Linebooker, over the last 3 years, a big portion of our business, important portion of our business, is vetting transport companies. And over the 4 or 5 years, we've been vetting over 600 transport companies. So I think over that time, we've got a good understanding of how to vet transport companies, and we've got a professional team that over 4 years have learned how to vet transport companies, to watch out for any of the risk areas in transport companies. So I think there is a benefit to the industry, because a customer that procures transport, they are not professional in vetting transport companies, and they shouldn't be. I mean, they specialize in producing whatever. So there we cover that, having a good idea how to vet transport companies in the industry, and that's the only transport companies we will allow access to Linebooker, or a customer will have access to, so they can sleep soundly that we've vetted those transport companies and we're professionals at it.
Yeah, and I can imagine those that you turn down. How many do you turn down? What proportion?
Yeah, so there's the smaller transport companies takes a bit more time. So, I mean, the larger companies, they've got their things and documentation, and for us to vet them is a much easier and shorter process. If you've got a new transport company with 2 or 3 or 4 vehicles, we go a bit deeper, we look a bit closer at them, and we also might only allow them access to low risk work for a certain period until we're comfortable with their service capabilities and everything else, before we open them up to the larger network of customers. Because you've got, assuming the trucks are fine now from a service perspective, when you've got low risk movements like paper waste and scrap steel, and from a service perspective, where you can first assess a smaller company and then kind of develop them into the larger network.
Naude Rademan is the co-founder and chief executive of Linebooker, and I'm Alec Hogg from BizNews.com.